Christ, you're fucking joking me! Fuck's sake! I'm trying to save us, you stupid fucking bastard! Shit! I'm doing this! Shit!
Still Wakes the Deep is a first-person horror game developed by the Chinese Room, known for their narrative-driven titles like Dear Esther and Amnesia, A Machine for the Pigs. You play as Cameron McCleary, a Scottish electrician working on the Beara D oil rig in the North Sea during the 1970s. The nickname Kaz is a common diminutive for the name Cameron in Scottish and British contexts. Here in the States, Cameron would be shortened down to just Cam. Disaster strikes the oil rig, and Kaz, as well as everyone on board the rig, will have to rapidly try and survive. A supernatural force has taken control of the rig, and you will have to traverse through claustrophobic tight corridors in an isolated, stormy atmosphere, amplifying a sense of despair. The game focuses on psychological and atmospheric horror, rather than gore and cheap jump scares. There will be a blend of environmental storytelling and stealth mechanics that will navigate you through this linear story and help you evade the unknown presence that is following you. After a brief confrontation with your boss, the action picks up and it never lets up, only getting more and more tense and challenging as the game progresses. Kaz's main motivation to survive on the oil rig is to see his family again, as it would be for most people, I would imagine. The game is not that long. Most people should be able to play through it in less than 4 hours, ensuring that the game doesn't overstay its welcome, but also make sure you grip the controller as if you're fighting for your life while being stranded at sea on an isolated oil rig. There is no combat in the game, there are no weapons, you have a 1970s dimly lit flashlight on your hard hat, and you have to interact with the environment, picking up and moving things to solve puzzles. Outside of that, the gameplay loop is largely stealth mechanics, evading the eerie presence and running for your life when you are caught. Both get your heart beating, and of course the pressure is intensified when you play on the harder difficulty. There aren't many characters that you meet in the game, but they do correlate with the overarching puzzles that you have to solve, meaning everyone is trying to work together to come up with a plan and evacuate the oil rig. There are employees that work in different departments on the rig, and usually when you set out on a task, you start by picking up the phone and talking to someone that will give you your next task. I want you to notice the button Kaz pushes on the phone. It correlates with a number card above it, and it can help you understand the oil rig better and where you're going next as you're navigating through all the missions. Some of the environmental puzzles are typical of what you would find in any horror game, such as being stealthy and throwing things in your environment to remain unseen. You are going to have to flip many switches in the game. And you are also going to have to start many pieces of machinery, such as this generator.
That worked, Kaz! I can see where the fault is! It's blowing a fuse back in mud handling!
And lastly, you might have to put out a few fires to remain on the linear path. As I've stated a couple times already in this review, progression is pretty linear, but I noticed that in the lead up to the end of the game, as the rig was filling up with water, You find yourself swimming a lot more, and linear progression gets harder and harder because the developers did a good job of causing confusion, and the chaos of what's happening disorientates you. The sense of urgency and desperation that you feel in the final moments leading up to the ending skews your perception of time, which I also thought the developers did a good job of through environmental storytelling. Alright, Spook Factor. This is a new gimmick that I'm adding to my horror reviews here on YouTube, and you'd be surprised that the number is always going to be somewhat low, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to be low because this number is subjective. What it means is, how much did the game scare me? You might be more scared, but I'm trying my best at, giving you something to account for, and you can kind of judge based on what you've seen here and the Spook Factor score. So overall, this game isn't really all that scary. There are some intense stealth sequences and chase sequences that I'll showcase here in a second. One of the spookiest things about this game is the sound that you hear after you get away from the thing that's chasing you. Here, check this out.
Sus. Jesus Christ, what the fuck is happening to me?
I like how in that last clip you can tell Kaz is starting to lose his mind, and you can tell the situation is starting to get to him, and he's starting to lose hope. And all he can think about is his wife over and over and over again. One last clip here. Check out this scary chase sequence. Alright, so overall, I think the world is beautiful. It's a good looking game. I think the lack of weapons in combat was a good choice to increase the sense of helplessness. Even though the gameplay loop was relatively the same throughout, whether that be lowering lifeboats, fixing generators, or reigniting a gas pipe flame, the game remained exciting, and the developers did a phenomenal job building tension through environmental storytelling. There were some predictable sequences like the QuickTime events that happened every time you were hanging on for dear life, but outside of that, it was a solid horror game. Overall, considering the spook factor and my overall experience playing the game, I give this a 7.5 out of 10, if only because of some of the predictable events and the lack of character building, even though I don't necessarily think the game needed that. It's a perfect weekend-style horror game for sure, and I have a better idea of what it would be like working on an oil rig, let alone the chaos that took place in this game.